Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cliffendy Pierre-Louis. I'm the Director General responsible for delivering services to business at the Canadian Intellectual Property Office. It is our third year hosting Black History Month event, and it is truly my honor and a privilege for me to be able to moderate the first panel discussion. Our objective today for the panel will be to actually explore how owning and protecting your ideas and innovation can become a real strategy for building wealth, not only for today, but also for your family and for future generations. I am joined by three exceptional leaders for the discussion today. First, we have Nicole Piggott, President of Synclusiv. Then we also have Janice Bartley. She's the founder and the executive director of Foodpreneur Lab. And last but not least, we have Dr. Gerald Grant, who's a principal lead for the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, but also the director of the Center for Information Technology Organization and People at Colton University. So it is really a real pleasure to have you with us today. To kick us off, I'd like to start with you, Nicole. I think in the discussion that we'll have today, it's going to be really helpful and important for everyone to understand the amazing work that you're leading with your company, Synclusiv. Are you actually able to share a little bit about your journey? What actually led you to decide to create a Synclusiv, and also how you went about to protect your own ideas and your brand that may have shaped your path as being a business owner?
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really proud to share with this team. So let me go back a little bit. I spent 30 years in the corporate space, and I had the privilege and the opportunity to rise to senior executive HR positions for large multinationals, Canadian multinationals. And I was working in the systems that sustained the status quo. And I would say in the spring of 2020, I experienced what I think many of the people on this call and experienced as well. And I will call it a personal reckoning. The spring of 2020, I was confronted with the fact that I had normalized the abnormal. I had normalized the exceptionalism of being the only senior executive who looked like me at the table. I had normalized that while companies would profess to have certain values, that when they lived those values, nothing much materially changed in the structures, the constructs of those organizations. So at that point, I had a choice to make. And I chose to take 30 years of experience of building and upholding those systems and decided that I'm going to take that insider knowledge to deconstruct those systems and build something better. And I really chose to be a builder. And that's really what I think is what underpins Synclusiv's mission. So it was clear that if I was going to go into consulting, I had to create something different. I had to build something that was a new blueprint, a new ecosystem, that because people, other consulting agencies clearly had not cracked the nut. So then that shifts to IP, because in consulting, unless the thing that makes you unique is the very thing that you need to protect. Otherwise, we're all pretty much the same. So all of us have that secret, that's those tools, those resources, those processes, those methodologies that make us unique from our colleagues. And if you don't protect those, they are up for grabs. And I learned that the hard way. So I very naively believed that if you're a friend and you're someone that I've worked with for years, that trusting relationship can translate into a business relationship. And what I discovered once, I made a pitch for a major organization in Canada, and I didn't get the job. We didn't get the contract. Years later, fast forward, I get called in to do another pitch. We get the contract, and it's a long-term contract. And as a long-term contractor, I got access to information within the organization. Lo and behold, what do I see? The information from my pitch a few years ago is not only part of materials that they're using within the organization in multiple areas, uncredited, I might add, which all of us here know from the Black experience that there's plenty of things that have won Nobel Peace Prizes that Black people have played a material role for which we have been uncredited. And so it was a real wake-up call for me that if this large organization could do this, everyone can do this. And that was the moment at which I said, we need to spend time protecting our intellectual property. And it was more than just our trademark of our name. It was about every tool, every proprietary tool that we had developed, every proprietary methodology that we use with our clients. We name them, we trademark them. And what that allows us to do as a business, in terms of all of you out there on this call, is that allows you to take your genius, your ideas, the thing that is the whatever you're bringing to the table, and it makes it a strategic lever for you, because it now becomes something that's scalable, that's sellable, that's tangible, and it's not just a concept or a methodology within your head. So if we talk about building Black wealth, unlike what people may think, they may think trademark isn't sexy, but what IP does is it gives you that ability to truly own it, and then it becomes yours to scale and grow.
Thank you, Nicole. I think it's quite fascinating to see that you provided the deck, you were not selected, and you've actually leveraged it. So it's obviously recognizing the talent that you had in providing that information, but also this is where, for us, it's really important to be able to make sure that we understand not only the value of our creation, but also to protect it in order to be able to achieve long-term value based on what we've created. I'd like to continue to build on that, because I think it's really important to showcase what you've described as being Black wealth. Janice, I know that your company is quite distinctive in Canada, and the way that you actually work with business owners at their different stage of growth in the food industry. So for those who may not know yet about Foodpreneur Lab, are you able to briefly talk about the work that you do, and share a little bit also the type of entrepreneur that you actually support as they build and grow their business?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Janice Bartley, and Foodpreneur Lab is a non-for-profit organization that's really dedicated to supporting food entrepreneurs as they build, launch, and sell their successful food businesses across Canada. We were founded in 2019, and our mission really was to level the playing field within the food ecosystem by addressing systemic barriers and creating equitable access with regard to industry resources, networks, and growth opportunities. So Foodpreneur Lab's focus has really been to support a diverse range of entrepreneurs, from early stage founders developing, their first product prototype, to more established businesses preparing to scale into retail markets, food service, or even exporting. What makes us a little bit unique is we also have our Foodpreneur Lab community, which also includes packaged food manufacturers, caterers, commercial kitchen operators, and really culturally inspired food innovators who are looking to transform the lived experience and culinary traditions into viable revenue generating businesses. What we do, and I love what Nicole said, the genius of what we're able to create, is that we've developed programs that really focus on hands-on and advisor-led and very tailored, specific to each growth stage within the entrepreneur's journey. And that includes, the focus on business strategy development, regulatory compliance, production readiness, commercialization planning, and access to commercial kitchens, where traditionally these were things that weren't embedded into spaces of support. And through this structured, what we call pathways, which we refer to start and scale, entrepreneurs are able to receive individualized mentorship, technical guidance, and industry access to help them build sustainable and scalable businesses. We are particularly focused on supporting entrepreneurs from historically underserved and underrepresented communities, including racialized founders and culturally diverse innovators. And we take a lot of pride in doing that. Many of our entrepreneurs that we support are building businesses rooted in culturally food traditions, and we want to celebrate that. So we help them navigate the barriers such as limited access to capital, production infrastructures or lack thereof, and distribution channels. And our role as our non-for-profit is really to help remove those barriers and provide a clear pathway from ideation, which is, hey, I think there's something I want to do, to prototype, to commercialization, to get it in the market. So ultimately, Foodpreneur Lab really exists to build stronger and a more inclusive food system. And we do that by ensuring that talented food entrepreneurs, regardless of background, have the tools and the knowledge and the resources to access these required environments to succeed and to contribute meaningfully to Canada's food ecosystem. And again, I think that's what's made us unique in terms of being sector specific.
Thank you, Janice, for sharing that. You've mentioned pathways to be able to scale and to start, but also to be able to scale. I know that we're going to be talking about barriers, but often in one of the elements to remove barriers is to actually have the ability to have guided process, right? To be able to learn and to be able to navigate through the challenges that we're facing. Dr. Grant, you study Black entrepreneurship nationally. I've witnessed your work that actually give us a really broad view of the different dynamics that may be involved when trying to be successful in business here in Canada for the Black community. So for those who may be less familiar with the work that you do, can you actually describe the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub and also the focus of the research that you lead?
Thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity for us to talk about the work that we're doing, and thank you for the partnership that we have had over the last few years. The Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub is part of the Black Entrepreneurship Program of the federal government. We are one of the three pillars of that program, and our focus is on doing research about Black entrepreneurs in Canada to understand the landscape of Black entrepreneurship, who Black entrepreneurs are, where they're located, what they're doing, what industries or sectors they're involved with, and so on. And another part of what we do is to literally map the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem across Canada. And that's one of the things that we have been doing and continue to do over the last several years. There's at least previous to this, there's very little data that is, at least evidence-based data on Black entrepreneurship in Canada, because the way data was collected in the past amalgamated everyone under people of color umbrella. And so to disaggregate who Black entrepreneurs were was quite difficult. And so that our job is to make this more explicit and use evidence from actual Black entrepreneurs to define who they are. Some of the things that we have done, as you've indicated, we did a national study that is of Black entrepreneurs across the country. We have our data comprises 2,300 verified responses across the country. And all our data and the research that we have done is now available to the public on a website called the Beck Dataverse on Borealis, which is a website that libraries use to make information public. So if you go to our website, beck.org, you will be able to link to our research there. And you can also find the Black Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Map, which is called the BEAM. We call it the BEAM. The website is thebeam.ca, the BEEM.ca, and you will find that there. So that is the work that we're doing. Going forward, of course, we'll be working on standardizing data collection across the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem. That will be part of our main work going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Grant, for sharing the work that you do, but also establishing that evidence-based data, right? I think for quite some time, we didn't have anything that we could relate back to. But right now, with the research and the information that you're collecting, we are able to proceed in informed decisions around programs and services to help the Black community. Our team, obviously, today is to build generation. It's about building generational wealth. We want to make sure that Black business owners and innovators have a meaningful participation in the Canadian economy. However, you cannot talk about generational wealth without acknowledging the barriers. And I think, Janice, Nicole, you did mention around some of the challenges that you faced to be able to pursue your business journey. Nicole, I'll start with you. From your perspective, like, what are the barriers that you see that Black entrepreneurs have from fully owning and protecting what they create? And it's either their ideas, their brands, their innovation. And what do you see that needs to change? Like, what is the shift that needs to happen so that we can all be playing in the same, to level the playing field for all of us?
I think this is an incredibly important question because it really calls us to reflect on what is the burning, compelling reason why we start businesses in the first place. And one of the issues that I consider to be the major barrier is when we launch a new business, you are in survival mode. And survival mode means all I care about is payroll, managing cash flow, how do I keep the doors open? And trademark seems like a luxury. Like thinking about protecting IP seems like a luxury that you have neither the time nor the agency to be able to be focusing on. So, you know, your immediate need is generating revenue and keeping that revenue stream flowing. It doesn't tend to shift to thinking about long-term assets, growth, strategy, and those sorts of things when you're in the survival mode. So I think the two main barriers that come to mind are, the first is the cost that is associated. When we started to explore protecting our trademark, our IP, one of the biggest hurdles that we had to come when you're focused on survival mode and meeting next month's payroll, spending thousands of dollars on an IP lawyer is something that you're just it's gonna be on your to-do list that you put aside and you say when that slush fund happens. And I think Janice mentioned something that's important. Black entrepreneurs do not get seed funding like other entrepreneurs get. So we do not have a big coffer sitting in the back waiting to that we can go pull on to be able to fund this type of endeavor, which is important, but when you're trying to keep the lights on, not a priority. The second barrier, I would say, is the complexity of the system. When you first start to even try and get your mind around what IP is, it can be complex. In fact, the first point at which it gained clarity for me was participating in one of your workshops, was the way that I sort of started to understand what IP was. So the complexity combined with the cost often makes it insurmountable for some people from the Black community to even contemplate it. So what I think needs to change, there's a mind shift that needs to change within our community from being strictly entrepreneurs that are selling, that are product and service-based thinking, to builder thinking. And builder thinking is really around my company, my organization is an asset. And IP is a critical, protection is a critical component of building growth in that asset. And that shift in thinking causes you to reprioritize IP protection, especially if you're going into international markets. Because we have talked at CIPO about the consequences of expanding to the US without IP protection. The second thing that needs to happen is the ecosystem that supports us needs to remove some of those financial barriers for us. So I think government agencies need to be looking at how they can more effectively fund and support Black entrepreneurs so that they can remove that financial burden from our shoulders to make this a reality. Those are, I think, if we could do those two things, we've got the genius. We can make it happen from there.
Excellent point. You've mentioned survival mode and the compelling reason to start your company. Janice, on your end, I can imagine that you're seeing these play out in a real time with entrepreneurs, people trying to just be able to pursue and figure out how to survive in establishing their ideas and making sure that they are able to basically make a living, right, with the businesses that they're built. So in recognizing the structural realities, right, that are currently happening, how do you see the impact to business in not thinking about intellectual property early as part of the decision making for them to actually grow? Because the expectation that it may create challenges and limitations, but as Nicole was saying, at some point in time, there's a requirement to do the mind shift from selling to building, but at the same time, it's recognizing that there are barriers, but also that there are potentially solutions to help with either the ecosystem or even reprioritizing some of the elements that help businesses be successful at protecting their IP. Nicole, I can't hear you, so I'm not sure if it's just me.
Sorry, it was me. My bad.
Okay.
My apologies. Yeah, I was saying Nicole was dead on in terms of her points that she mentioned that we've all experienced either personally or with those that we work with. And I'll talk about what the challenges look like when entrepreneurs are looking to grow and scale and attract investment, exactly to what Nicole was saying, and retain ownership as part of the value. So, you know, I always say it's either volunteer or voluntold, and I'll explain that. So volunteer is where you are proactive and you recognize that I have built something that has value and I want to make it sustainable. But the challenge to that is exactly what Nicole said. You're so focused on working on in the business, you don't have time to work on the business. And so what tends to happen is we neglect the fact that all that time and effort that is put into creating the name, building brand awareness, having that value added product into the market, we take for granted until we turn left and see something similar, mimicking exactly the genius of what we've created. And so one of the things that we talk about is that it is challenging finding the money to trademark your business or get that IP in play, especially when you're focused on trying to cover your overhead. And one of the other things that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially, and I stick to my sector in the food business, is that as we're growing the business and we're developing these websites and the packaging, then the voluntold piece is you get a cease and desist letter, and now all that investment in your packaging and your websites you have to go back and fix, if not eliminate, because now you have to rebrand. And what that has now cost you is time, effort, and loyalty to the brand, because when you switch your brand awareness, that creates confusion with your consumer. So now you have to go back and inform them, oh, we've changed. So there's a cost to that, which I call the consequence of not having the IP in place. The other piece is, if you're looking to expand into markets, and this is one people don't think about, and Nicole touched on it, if you're looking to export in international markets, just because you have...
Oh, we've lost you again. Nicole, we've lost you. We can't hear you.
I think it's Janice who's...
Oh, sorry, Janice.
What's the impact of when you have IP on your valuation downstream if you want to sell the business or you're looking for investment? So these definitely impact the time, the effort, and to steal Nicole's quote, the genius of the build of what you're doing. And I too personally have had Nicole's same experience of having someone try to take your intellectual property and use it. And it's always the loss of ownership. And that's significant, because who wants to build something worthy over a 10-year period, only have to go back and dismantle it because you failed to check a box and you're on your checklist of things that are important. So I would definitely say that IP piece is equally as important as it is to register the business, as it is to have insurance for the business. I don't know if everybody remembers, they used to have this little badge. It was called "Around to It," which was the phrase "I'll get around to it." And I would not put it on that list. It has to be a prioritized, even if you're doing it in increments. And to Nicole's point, I think this is where the opportunity comes, where the government can play a significant role in that support mechanism as well, because these are viable businesses, and you certainly don't want to derail them by these situations that we're discussing.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So we've learned from your experience and your perspective on what should be put in place to help businesses, but also the issues of not protecting early, right? So it is costly. It is costly to actually protect, but at the same time, it could be so much more expensive if you actually don't think about it in terms of timing, or as soon as it should be something that you should consider. Dr. Grant, I'd like to ground the discussion here around barriers in evidence. So from a data perspective and the research that you've done across Canada, do you see intellectual property as a tool that could actually strengthen and sustain the success of Black business?
Yeah, thanks for the comments. I'm intrigued by the experiences, and we can concur from the data Nicole and Janice, that most of the business, most Black businesses are in that struggle area. Most are micro businesses or what we call nano businesses. And the focusing on these, they don't have the resources upfront, or more importantly, they don't have the personnel to help them through this process. Most of the businesses have less than one or two employees, and only after a while they can get bigger. So this is a huge challenge. And then it is not clear from the data that many of them have access to the financial support that is there. Most have not heard of most of these programs that we're talking about, for example. Most have not benefited from it. And in many cases, most are not even willing to start participating in a way that means that they will be, what did I say, selling part of their business, so to speak, to get funding from other people other than family and friends on their credit cards. So this is a difficult part of it. But I think what to overcome this, going on what you have said, we need to think about IP as not just protection, but as an asset. You know, oftentimes we think of it as protection only, but it needs to be treated as an asset that will help us, our organizations, grow. It allows for the retention of control and the transfer of that value over time. So again, like you both said, we have to make sure that we understand this upfront, because it can cost us much later on. And I know even on myself, as I'm saying this, I know I have some intellectual property that I've been putting out there for a long time, and I'm not sure where it's gone and who's going to take it. But hopefully, since it's documented, I can at least retain some of it. So what we have learned also is that for people to invest in your business, the first thing they want to know is how have you protected your intellectual property. If intellectual property is not protected, it makes it hard for you to attract investment. And so overall, I think Canadian Black businesses need more help to focus on how they can actually do this work, while at the same time trying to scale and grow. It's a lot on their plate, and we need support and mentorship, which we're happy to see that's coming from CIPO to help them in this process. And more needs to be done in this vein.
Thank you, Dr. Grant. The financial challenge is something that is extremely difficult to overcome. I know on our end, we do our best to socialize the funding program, and so that people are being able to be aware, but also to be able to access. I know there's several discussions around who get access to the funding. Is it fair? Is it transparent? So there's a lot of question on that front. And I know also that from a government perspective, recognizing the circumstances right now and the geopolitical situation that we're living through, that yes, I think every program is fighting, right, to actually get to a sustainable set of funding that can help businesses, not only for us, but for all Canadian businesses across the country. I'm conscious of time, I'd like to probably go with the last question. I'd like to hear your perspective on it. So we've talked about barriers, we've talked about opportunity. Based on the current circumstances right now, do you how do you see businesses building wealth that can go beyond their current business ownership, right? So we talk about the ability to for them to actually benefit in investing sooner to be able to actually proceed in creating that generational wealth, but recognizing the circumstances, how would you advise them to proceed or to get the support that they need to pursue their dream and to actually build that generational wealth? I'll start with you, Nicole.
Thanks. This is essentially why we're here. I mean, we build our businesses, but you really want to be building something that is elevating our community and elevating us economically throughout the community. I look at it in terms of layers. And I think there's sort of 3 layers that need to be unpacked in order to make that happen. The first layer is creating what I call sort of transferable value. So what I consider the value of registering intellectual property, moving from Dr. Grant said it, from protection to building an asset, is you take that secret sauce, that special sauce of whatever it is that is what you do, and it allows you to build your reputation, to take that recipe and make it something that has a tangible value that you can then either sell, that is something that can be something that is transferred over to the next generations within your community or your family. It becomes an asset that can be inherited, sold, licensed, etc. So that's that first layer of building wealth. The second layer is it unlocks new revenue streams. Let me take consulting as a perfect example, because what we do is often considered to be service-based. You're taking a problem and you're working with the client to solve it. But where the opportunity is taking those models that we use to work with clients. And if you patent those, if you patent the technology or you trademark the tools and resources that you're using to support those clients, those then become sources of revenue that are independent of the founder. They actually become things that can be developing wealth for you that are independent of the founder actually engaging with physically and intellectually with the client. So that's a source of revenue that's untapped, absent of IP. And the third one is showing the way to the next generation. We talked about that survivor mode that we're in. That survivor mode is not simply something that all new entrepreneurs have to deal with. That survivor mode is something that we, as descendants of slaves in many cases, have fostered and developed, that notion of, I got to keep the lights on. I've got to be building something that protects me against hostile contexts that I may be encountering. And that mindset keeps us in place. But this notion of scalability, that investing and commoditizing your product actually allows you to break that legacy, that cycle. And the next generation of entrepreneurs can now have that vision to be able to look beyond simply keep survivor mode and into growth and owning our brilliance and owning our legacy and no longer letting someone else claim what our genius, as I said earlier.
Thank you, Nicole, for that. I think you said it well, where we need to start thinking, and you've said it all well. It's no longer about protection; it's about the business value, the business asset. How can you actually build something that will survive you, right? and leverage it to actually be able to further your ability to flourish within your business. Janice, I'm not sure if you wanted to add something to the notion of how to actually push businesses to think about IP under their current circumstances.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, to Nicole's point and to Dr. Grant, it's really the asset. Ownership is the asset. I think for entrepreneurs, we get caught up just in having a distinctive business name, and we think that's the be all and the end all that sets us apart. But you really have to go back and ask yourself, okay, well, why did you create the business? You're either a solution to a problem, or you are filling a need or a gap. Those are the basic MVP things we always look at before we pull the parachute and say, okay, we're gonna jump into the deep end. But we also have to recognize that IP can also entail, to Nicole's point earlier, product formulations, processes, something that you've created that's innovative. And so when you look at it from that lens, that ownership is integral to the sustainability of your business. And so for me, that it's always a long-term perspective, because nobody usually goes and builds a business and say, hey, I'll just kick this around for 3 years and see what happens. It's a commitment. And so from a long-term perspective, it's really looking at ownership and how it directly impacts scalability and legacy. We look at it from increased investor confidence, if that's what we want to see in terms of the vision, and really strengthening your negotiation power when it comes to, let's say, distributors and retailers. It also creates opportunities for licensing, partnerships, acquisitions, and other things, as well as the more important piece of building the generational value and maintaining control over how your brand evolves. So, one of the things that we do at Foodpreneur Lab is that we've incorporated that IP piece. Whereas before, traditionally, when you go into accelerators, incubators, it's not something that was touched. I'm eternally grateful for CIPO to allow us to have that incorporated into the knowledge, because I've always said knowledge is power. And so at least they have the awareness of what needs to happen, and they are not flying blind. And then the second piece to that long-term vision or long-term perspective, one of the things I encourage our entrepreneurs to do is cash flow tells every story. And every entrepreneur has to have one. It's like being clairvoyant, the ability to figure out when you're going to run out of money and when you have enough. And in the creation of that cash flow is an opportunity to embed a line item, to have an expense, to prepare to spend money on the IP requirements, so that it's not a surprise. It doesn't show up because you got a cease and desist letter. It's planning, it's proactive, it is anticipating the growth and staying as close to the vision as possible. So maybe you don't get to do it in year 1, but you can put a line item in year 2, and you can budget for it, so that then you're now on the path, as opposed to, waiting for an event to happen, or being forced to do it earlier and unplanned. And that's where things start to fall apart. So I'd say that would be my advice.
Thank you. Great advice. I think you've mentioned it at the beginning, Nicole, a lot of people, once they understand that they have IP and they should probably consider protecting it, they're surprised. They're surprised just because of the cost and the complexity of the process to actually secure their innovation. And I think preparation, as you mentioned it, Janice, is key, is extremely important for people to be ready, but also to be effective in their ability to pursue protection. So I will leave the last word to Dr. Grant. Any advice from your end based on the data that you see and the research that you're doing?
All the advice that's been given so far are excellent. The idea of multiple streams of passive income from IP is very important for us to remember that once you have this protection, value that you can transfer and monetize, so to speak, you can have, aside from your business, multiple streams of passive income. For example, as Janice pointed out, licensing. One of the things that we see in our ecosystem map is that many of our organizations, of the businesses that are on it, are in fields like healthcare, and wellness, community and social services, professional services, retail and technology areas. And these areas coincide with some of the most intellectual property intensive areas that in the Canadian business landscape. And therefore, if you're operating in these spaces, you need to be careful to know that you need to put a lot of emphasis on protecting your intellectual property. It is also some of the fields where it can easily be harvested by other people. If you don't protect your intellectual property, others will harvest it very quickly, especially larger businesses that will start using your terms and so on. I've seen that, where all of a sudden things that I've been talking about for years are starting to show up in the larger consulting firms. Of course, many of them my students have taught, so start showing up as their own property with their own twist on it. So I think, that's what I would say, is that we need to both look for those opportunities, understand the field that we're playing in terms of the value of the intellectual property in that area, and at the same time, be mindful that you can have multiple streams of passive income from this intellectual property.
Thank you for that, Dr. Grant. So this concludes the discussion that we have on the topic today. I'll open the floor for questions. We have a few minutes to take questions from the audience. Just looking here in the chat. I don't see any question, and it just may be me. Just a second. Okay. I'm conscious of time. We're actually over time at this point. Listen, I want to take the opportunity to sincerely thank you for your insight today. I think you have been able to bring depth, clarity, and also a lot of purpose and actions in terms of where we should go from our organization, because I'm hearing support around awareness and educating people to overcome complexity of protecting, but also how the government can actually improve its ability to help Black Canadians financially to be able to secure that very important asset and innovation that they have. And I think right now for us, what is my takeaway is that intellectual property is not abstract, right? It is something real. It is something tangible. We need to think about it as being an asset, and it touches on anything that has to do with being able to own what you've built, being able to leverage it, being able to protect its value, but also being the right, leveraging the right timing and the right mindset to actually lead a pathway that will bring people to long-term economic strength. So with that, I'll thank you very much for your contribution for the conversation today. And what we'll do is that we will take a 10-minute break. The second panel will start at 2:40. And the second panel is titled Enabling Growth, How Organizations Support Black Business Development. So I'm really looking forward to the next conversation, and thank you again, Nicole, Janice, and Dr. Grant for your amazing insight and discussion today.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
us.
for having us.
Thanks for having
you.
us.
Thank you, everyone. Just a quick modification. We will actually take a 5-minute break instead of a
Okay, sorry
10-minute break. And while we're taking before the break, like we just want to take like a quick group picture with everyone that talked and then everyone that will talk. So if anyone that's a panelist can turn their camera on and do a little smile, it'd be great for social media. And then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back at 2:35 Eastern Standard Time. I'll ask everyone that's going to be a panelist for the second panel to turn their camera on so that we can get started. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. That's great. So we talked about a lot of things for the first panel. We want to add to the discussion. So it is my pleasure and honor to moderate the second panel discussion today. During our discussion, the objective is to highlight some of the concrete programs, partnership, and support that can help Black entrepreneurs move when it comes to starting at the beginning to scaling, and then protecting and leveraging their IP. So we heard about some challenges. We want to now hear about some answers or some solutions to these challenges. So on the virtual stage, we have Tolu Amadi from BIPOC Foundation. We also have Eddy from Futurpreneur, and we have Natalia Thal from Intellectual Property Institute of Canada. So we'll start with Natalia. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your organization?
Thank you, Stephen. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm an intellectual property lawyer and also a registered patent agent. I'm also the founder and principal lawyer at Thal Intellectual Property Law, a boutique IP law firm. And I'm here today on behalf of the Intellectual Property Institute of Canada, also known as IPIC. IPIC is the National Association of IP Professionals, so that includes patent agents, trademark agents, and IP lawyers like myself across the country. Its mission is to enhance the expertise of its members as trusted IP advisors, and to help shape a policy and a business environment that encourages innovation and economic growth in Canada. And IPIC does this through, for example, advocacy with government on IP laws and programs, professional education and certification, and also public-facing resources that help businesses understand and use IP strategically. It also partners with other organizations in the IP village to improve IP awareness for Canadian small and medium-sized businesses, including underrepresented founders. And part of helping to make IP more accessible is education and helping founders understand that, like we discussed earlier, the IP isn't just a legal formality, it's a business asset. And for a Black entrepreneur that's building something from the ground up, understanding IP early on can be really the difference between owning your own lane and what you're building and watching someone else profit from your idea.
Wonderful. We'll be looking forward to hearing more about how to use that business asset in the following question and the discussion. But for now, we'll move to Tolu. Tolu, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your organization as well, please?
All right, thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be part of this organization. and greetings to you, Mr. Eddy and Natalia. I'm Tolu Amadi. I lead IP programs at BIPOC Foundation. I'm also the founder of AC Digital, where I work with organizations on digital transformation and process optimization. At BIPOC Foundation, our focus is economic empowerment for Black entrepreneurs and equity-deserving communities. We work to reduce barriers to growth by providing education, strategic support, and access to capital pathways and connections into the broader ecosystem. My role specifically centers on intellectual property and understanding commercialization. So we help founders move from ideas to protected, scalable businesses, and we don't start with the legal filings. So we start basically with the awareness education as well as clarity. We help founders understand what they're building, where the value sits, and how IP supports the long-term growth before they engage professionals. We also run an accelerator style program like the BIPOC Founders Hub. Used to be the Black Founders Hub, but we did find more demand culturally. And then the LIFT program supporting entrepreneurs at different stages. Across sectors from retail and food, manufacturing to tech and creative industries, we act as a bridge between founders, public programs, and the IP ecosystem so that IP becomes strategic and tied to their real growth.
I love that. I love the strategic piece. There's something that we always talk about here at CIPO. So I'll be looking forward to hearing some of your insights about that. Thank you so much. Eddy, your turn. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your organization, please?
Of course. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to be part of this panel discussion today. And yes, about myself, I'm a business development manager for Futurpreneur. I joined Futurpreneur a little bit 5 years ago. And then we didn't have any programs for Black entrepreneurs. We used to have a general program where anybody can apply. And then to 2021, we started that new journey. There's that new program for Black entrepreneurs, specifically for Black entrepreneurs. We also add at the same time an indigenous program, but I'm mainly focused on the Black entrepreneur startup program because I'm the business development manager for Eastern Ontario and also part of Toronto GTA. And to talk about Futurpreneur, who we are, so we are a nonprofit organization. Basically, what we do, we help young entrepreneurs. Of course, that question is always there. We help young entrepreneurs between the age of 18 to 39, either to launch a new business, no operation at all, or if they already have a business but less than 24 months, they are welcome to Futurpreneur. And what we do with those entrepreneurs, we give them two things: funding and mentorship. And they can get funding up to $75,000 with Futurpreneur, and with 2 years of mentorship. And with the Black Entrepreneur Startup Program at Futurpreneur, it's the only program where they can get additional funding, which they can get between $5,000 to $40,000 between the year 2 and year 4 of their business operations. And the main reason why we come up with that program is because we have noticed that Black entrepreneurs, they have a lot of difficulties to have access to funding, mainly because of their credit. And this is why we come up with that program, and also making sure that we are more flexible and more inclusive to give them a better chance to access to funding. And what's interesting with our program, it is collateral free or guarantee free. So they don't need to present anything to get access to our funding. And that's make it much more, I would say, inclusive and much more flexible for them to access to funding. And the other thing we have with the mentor program, because you can't get funding without mentorship, and you cannot get mentorship without funding at Futurpreneur. So the moment they have a loan approved, they will be matched with a mentor for a period of 2 years, which they have 5 hours per month the first 2 years of their business operations. And it's open mostly for entrepreneurs, as I mentioned, between the age of 18 to 39. But if we can't help in terms of funding, we do have other resources or partners which we will refer them to get funding. So that's about everything we can say about Futurpreneur.
That's great. What I'm hearing is that you're helping people with financing and mentoring. And then if you're not in a position to help them, you're really well connected and you're able to connect them with the right players in the ecosystem. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Perfect. All right. So big question that comes up for me when I was listening to the first panel, they talked about how at the beginning Black entrepreneurs don't necessarily have access to seed funding, for example, or access to a large network of investors that have tons of cash that wants to invest in them. So I have a question for you, Natalia, about that. When do you think that Black entrepreneurs should start reaching out to an IP professional, and how can they do it from a cost-effective perspective?
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, and the honest answer is earlier than you think, and as early as possible. And ideally before you start talking publicly about your idea. As we kind of learned from and discussed earlier today, most folks come to an IP lawyer after something has gone wrong. You've received a cease and desist letter from a competitor. A competitor started copying your product, or they've realized that they've accidentally forfeited their rights by disclosing too early and talking about something too early before they have protections in place. And by then, the options are more limited and more expensive. So the right moments to engage an IP professional are, for example, when you're developing something novel, like a process, formulation, technology, software, or design. When you're coming up with a name for your business or your product, or when you're about to share your idea with a potential partner or investor. And certainly before you sign any contract that involves your creative work or your inventions. So those are some of the key moments when you want to speak to an IP professional. And in terms of doing that, and keeping it cost effective, first off, to start off, you can definitely, and you want to use the free and low cost educational resources that are available. There's got lots of guides on CIPO, lots of resources in IP Village, BIPOC, other hubs, and they'll explain the basics and help you have and develop more sharper and focused questions. And then you want to start working and have a initial consultation with an IP professional. So many lawyers and IP professionals, they'll offer initial consultations at low or at no cost. And that first consultation, that first conversation that you're going to have will certainly give you some information and a roadmap, at least, even if you can't yet afford or you're not yet ready to go forward with fully retaining and getting full representation at that moment. And also you can leverage a lot of the funded programs and supports that are available. There's lots of initiatives that are currently available and have been for a little bit, have been for some time. So for example, federal and provincial innovation programs, there's IP related funding such as Elevate IP, IP Assist, which is offered through the NRC IRAP and also through BIPOC. There's Springboard Atlantic for the Atlantic provinces. There's also IP Ontario or IPON. And there's lots of accelerator supports as well. And they'll help subsidize, the development of an IP strategy, and also sometimes the first filings, so your first registrations, especially for, this is something that's very helpful for key for small and innovative businesses. And lastly, I'd add that you want to, we talked about it earlier today, this afternoon, you want to build an IP, you want your IP to follow your business, right? So you want to build an IP budget into your business plan, and treat it like an insurance for the core value of your business, and, try to stage it with your spending and your milestones as well, and rather than thinking about IP when an emergency pops up.
Okay, wonderful. So what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of opportunities to get access to information related to IP. It depends on your budget, it depends on where you are in your life cycle, but the important thing is to do it as early as possible, to start looking at options as early as possible.
Exactly.
Perfect. At CIPO, we also have some of these options, like you mentioned, some of the free options. We have IP advisors, for example. Some of my colleagues are available, and we have also tools and resources where people can have access to. We actually launched a new tool not too long ago where there's a lot of information available on it. So these are some of the options. But I like that you mentioned that it's possible to also access to some time at low cost or no cost from IP lawyers, which is something that I don't think everyone knows about. Great. So we'll follow up with a question for both of you, actually, for Tolu and also for Natalia. Can you talk a little bit about like the life cycle of an IP strategy? Like when we talked about business, like the business plan and the business strategy, and then also the IP kind of lining up with it. So IP and business kind of merge or work together. So if you could talk, we'll start with you, Tolu, like the IP strategy. Like how do you help people with that? And can you talk about what's the life cycle when it comes to IP strategy?
Okay, I can talk basically about the life cycle from a general standpoint. So again, like I mentioned before, it starts from awareness. So when, founders know about the IP or they start getting engaged with our organization, it might not even be through our organization, but we do have a network of other organizations that we work with within Elevate IP. And so they get awareness through that, and they feel that, okay, well, we don't want to work with these other organizations, but we feel more inclined to BIPOC Foundation. So they start getting the awareness, they get the education, and then they work with us to start at the time when a lot of things are changing now, but at the time when we were working with the group last year, we had them start off with their business model canvas, their cap table, and also understanding a little bit more about where they are at within their business. And one of the things that we do is to engage them in an accelerator style program. So once they do that, they're able to now graduate into, say, submitting some of their IP documents. And once that is accepted, then they go into the IP strategy process, where they look for say, potentially an IP consultant or a lawyer to work with to create a strategy that would help them to understand some of the intricacies of their business. I'm not sure if we're also talking about measuring support right now, but I can also talk about that, where we from the onset of when we help them, we collect baseline data. So where are they in the business stage? What's their revenue? Do they have any awareness? The ownership gaps, and then commercialization readiness. So that gives us a very good starting point. Then once they go into the program, like the BIPOC Founders Hub and the LIFT program, some of the things that are particularly important is the process, because they create structured, we're able to create structured checkpoints. So through the cohort-based learning, they're able to get an advisory session. So about 6 to 8 advisory sessions within the cohort, and then milestone reviews where we're able to track progression and not just participation. So we look at how founders' decision-making evolves. So sometimes we will hear founders say, I need more inventory in my store. And at the end of the program, they're clear about their margins. They know that there are other ways to get inventory and not just focus on filling up the whole store. You know, there are other better ways of doing things. So maybe the best buy style of, you know, getting inventory as opposed to just filling up the whole store. And then have they identified protectable assets? Are they moving from into IP strategy or the legal engagement at the right time? And are they positioning themselves more effectively for, say, capital or partnerships? And I can give examples. For example, we had a retail case, and a founder initially believed she wasn't profitable, but through the founders accelerator, she walked through her pricing structure, her cost alignment, and then the brand differentiation. And that clarity enabled her to qualify for the IP funding. It also enabled her to develop a protection strategy and eventually become more attractive to investors, securing about $250,000 in the first 3 months after she did the program and submitted her IP strategy.
So you're telling me that someone didn't think they were profitable, and through learning about IP some way, somehow, and working with you, obviously, and your organization, they found out that there was $250,000 like hidden somewhere in there.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's a great story. I'm really glad that you shared it. That's really amazing. Natalia, anything that you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, no, thank you, Tolu. I mean, I add a little bit in terms of, you know, thinking about IP. An IP strategy is something that kind of evolves with your business. And Tolu's, you know, definitely spoken about that. I think some folks, you know, also often think about an IP strategy as, you know, I've, you know, filed my application for my patent or my for my trademark registration, and it's really not just, you know, that one-time filing. It's, you know, an ongoing plan and process. And like Tolu mentioned, it really starts at the idea stage with protection, right? You want to identify what actually is protectable. You know, maybe it's a patentable feature, it's your trade secrets, you know, processes, methods, you know, confidential and competitive know-how and information, copyrightable content, brand names, and you want to think about how you're securing that confidential information. Is it through NDAs, for example? You know, you want to look at your employment and contractor agreements. And speaking of those agreements, you want to make sure that they are aligning with your business goals. So, like, do they assign IP ownership to your company or to an individual? You want to sort that out early on and make sure that ownership of the IP is assigned to your company. And again, at the launch stage, it also shifts to, again, establishing rights. You know, filing trademarks on your brand, filing patents on your invention, registering your copyright where it's relevant. And you're thinking about also, you know, what countries matter the most in this, right? You know, where do you see your business growing and expanding into in the future? And this is also the stage where you're thinking about the competitive landscape. You know, what are your competitors doing? What are they protecting? What does their IP portfolio look like of their registered assets? And where's the white space? Like, is there room for you? And then as you grow and as you're scaling, you know, IP strategy also becomes about leverage. And that was discussed earlier about licensing your IP to generate revenue and multiple streams of income, and using your portfolio to attract investment or partnerships, and protecting, of course, your rights against copycats and infringement, right? So this also, of course, you know, applies when you expand internationally. You want international protection, and that certainly becomes relevant if you're selling or expanding beyond Canada. And, you know, as I guess at the maturity or the exit stage, when you're thinking, oh, you know, do I want to retire? You know, your portfolio is going to be, you know, a very valuable asset. Buyers and investors look closely at whether your IP is clean, registered, enforceable, and actually owned by the company. So getting ownership sorted out early on is important. And, you know, many deals fall apart or get devalued in due diligence because there was gaps in the IP that could have been addressed much earlier, years earlier. So yeah, thinking about IP should be more of like a legal expense. It really should be a thinking like about business investment, and that will compound over time.
I like that you mentioned how it does compound over time, and it's a business investment, not an expense, because once you're using it properly and you're using your strategy, you know where you're investing. Is it going to be in Canada, or you're going to be deploying what you're doing in other countries? There's definitely an opportunity for potential return on investment. So thank you so much for saying that. I just want to mention quickly, Natalia, your camera went off. So just wanted to let you know, if you could take a look at that while we're talking to Eddy about a bit more talks about money. So so Tolu told us about how one not investor, but an entrepreneur was able to find an extra 250,000, and I think like we can all use an extra 250,000. Sometimes it's not out there easy to find, but when people get access to an organization like Futurpreneur, for example, and then you decide to support them, like what are you looking at from like Black entrepreneurs to you know, that maybe they underestimate, or they don't miss, or maybe they don't know, or they haven't found, or they haven't recognized as value? Like how do you at Futurpreneur look into that?
Very good question. So, first of all, we mostly, I would say, we support most businesses as long as they come up with something realistic, something that makes sense. Then they can get our support. Now, most entrepreneurs, they one of the things I would say they neglect a few things. So, one of the first one is the market research. So they have an idea, but they don't know who's going to buy that business, that product or that service they are willing to offer, and they don't know where to get those informations. And also, one of the second things that I've noticed neglect as well, it's the SWOT analysis. So no market research, no SWOT analysis to know what if they have competitors and what can differentiate them from the competitors, and see what they can offer. And these are the things that for some reason the mostly focus to get the funding, but no focus on what to do to see what the competitors has to offer. And to answer one question that you will, I anticipate that question. It's, you know, I can see them putting a lot of effort in getting the funding, but they to get funding from us, they need to present a business plan and also a cash flow projections. And inside of the cash flow projections, there's something very important that they need to invest money into. It's marketing. So they will invest money in the marketing, but at the same time, if they have a brilliant idea, they will not think about investing money to IP, and which is very, very important, because if you have that idea and you invest money into marketing, but you neglect to invest money in IP, so you kind of shooting yourself. So this is things that unfortunately I don't see enough, I would say, advertising for your service for them to know that they have things like that. Because each time I speak with someone, with any entrepreneurs, I have to go through different aspects of the business, but also to tell them, you know, you can benefit from this partner, this resource that is available for you. So you should look after those resources, but they don't know where to get them. So this is something I think we should promote more of those services that or resources that are available for them, so they don't have access to those things.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. People are looking for the money. They're looking at advertising, but they might be marketing something that they don't have any protection from. Is that what I'm understanding?
Exactly.
Okay, that sounds dangerous based on some of the conversation that we've been hearing about today. So thank you so much for sharing that. For you, when a business has IP, does that influence the funding in any way, or do you provide funding for IP?
Actually, yes, we do provide funding for IP, but it's not necessarily the main focus for Futurpreneur. So we will give money as long as we have a good business idea, a good business project, and if they're looking for funding, and then if I see there's a need for them to have IP, of course I will push them definitely to get that funding to protect themselves, because having a good business idea and then without any protection, so you open yourself for anybody to steal your idea. So without that protection, so having the money to spend for that, it's the same way as they have the obligation to invest money into their marketing. It's the same thing that they would have the obligation to invest into protect themselves with having IP.
Okay, perfect. So now we'll move to Tolu. Tolu, at BIPOC Foundation, like you work with I said on a program, Elevate IP. Can you tell us a little bit about the benefits of the program for Black entrepreneurs?
Okay, so through ISED and Elevate IP initiatives, Black entrepreneurs gain early structured access to IP support, often before costly mistakes are made. I've seen situations where founders file on their own without conducting a full name search or selecting the correct trademark classes. And sometimes the business evolves and the original filing no longer reflects the brand properly. So what should have taken about 6 to 7 months to achieve for, say, a typical trademark can stretch into 2 years or 3 years due to objections, refilings, or category corrections. And that delay impacts their scaling, could impact their partnerships, could impact also investment conversation. So Elevate IP reduces that risk because they're provided with the education and coaching before legal engagements. So even before they get to the legal part of things, we're talking about the IP strategy, understanding the 360 aspects of your business, where you might have trademarks, where you might have your methodologies or processes that needs to also be filed, understanding the agreement part, as Natalia had mentioned, and the founders approach the protection strategically rather than reactively. So what's also powerful is also the well-rounded ecosystem support that we have. We have other ecosystem navigators on with us, like the University of Calgary. We also have there's about four other ecosystem supports, and through ISCD and Elevate IP, we're not only supporting the strategy, we're also tracking the progression from the onset. So we collect the data that we need, and the access and how founders advance through the program. And then the model also recognizes that Black entrepreneurs often face ethnic specific challenges, such as limited access to early advisory networks, capital gaps, and lower exposure to IP literacy. I'll give an example very quickly. For the last round, we had some very late filers, late submitters for the IP funding. And one of the reasons where they couldn't possibly get a lawyer, they worked tirelessly 24 hours in the business, and then it got to the point where they needed to submit the application for the strategy, and they couldn't find any lawyers. So one of the things we did across our network was to speak with Elevate IP, Innovate Calgary, and find out which of the lawyers may be available at certain times. And even within our BIPOC network as well, we did find lawyers through connections that could actually help to sign some of their cap tables so that they can submit. So they look through their documents, their business filings, and then sign the cap table. And that's the way they're able to get through some of the barriers that we see happen within the ecosystem. And these lawyers are willing to do it for not just, sometimes those things can cost maybe $400 per hour, but they would reduce their rates because they see the amount of work that these founders are actually putting in to get their business forward. So that's one major example that stands out. So the program design accounts for these realities, ensuring that support is contextual, structured, and aligned with the goals of commercialization. Also, from a system perspective, it also ensures that public funding is used effectively. So the founders engage the IP professionals with clarity and intent because they already know all of the areas of their business that they need to work on, reducing premature filings and then increasing alignment between protection, scaling, and then capital attraction. Elevate IP also helps shift IP from an afterthought to a core business and investment asset, strengthening long-term growth and generational economic participation.
So could you give just a bit more detail about how it does that? And while you're doing that, I just want to invite everyone to any questions that you have. This is your time. This event is for you. We have about 10 minutes left for questions. Questions can be asked in a language of your choice. If you ask a question in French, we'll translate it so that it can be answered. This is your last 10 minutes to ask questions. So I'll invite you to write your questions in the chat. And while you're doing that, I have a lot of other questions too, if people don't have questions, but it'd be great if people had some questions. In the meantime, just a bit more information about how do you help people to really use that asset for long-term wealth? Like you said something about that. I'd love you to just add to it if you can.
Okay. So asset for long-term wealth. Let's look at the IP, going off script for a bit. We look at the IP business model canvas that we work with founders. So as soon as they come into the program, within the first week of joining either the LIFT program or the BIPOC Founders Hub, one of the things that they're doing is actually summarizing all of their business plan in a one-pager, so that they understand, where, who are the partners, how much are they going to make. So they do that at the first instance of that program. And then it advances on to after the program, and they've learned so much about licensing, some of the things that could be assets within their business. And they go back to their business model canvas and then make adjustments within the cost areas and say, oh, well, we can actually partner with this organization. We actually partnered with this organization, but we didn't recognize it as a partnership. So some of those things are how it could potentially be an asset to them and how they can actually find a go-to growth strategy for that. And that's one of the things that even the IP program asks for, to create a growth strategy, not only the business model canvas, for 5 to 10 years from now. So I think in a nutshell, I will clarify this as a mindset shift from when they start to when they progress. And then because they have everything, documented, they have the cap table, they have the financials all documented, they're able to now go on and are confident within their business. They know exactly what needs to be a source, maybe not now, but at least at a smaller scale, and then how they can focus on the business and not in the business.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We do have a question from our participant. This is a question that comes from Ingrid. What advice would you give someone regarding protecting IP when its development requires the use of technology that has been used or accessed by hackers? That's the first question. Then there's a follow-up question to that. Is there any government funding that could help someone facing this issue? I have never applied for or accessed government funding. Also, is there an organization that could offer advice and assistance? So a couple questions in there. It's not addressed to someone in particular, so like anyone can jump in on this one. I think maybe Natalia be more like suitable for you, but if Tolu you had anything to add to that, or Eddy, like feel free to.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Ingrid, for your question. I think this question's more nuanced and might require some assistance from a technology lawyer, most likely. Just trying to, I guess, scope out where the IP begins and ends, kind of like where does you know, any influence or impact from the access or use by the hackers impact your own, like the development of your own IP or in protecting it. So it probably needs some more you know, in-depth consultation to address it. That said, in terms of IP funding, I'm you know, the funding organizations that we've discussed, like, you know, whether it's Elevate IP, IPON, etc., or you know, IP Assist, like those funding programs are for they could provide some assistance. I think this might be a very nuanced area where it might fall through. There might be a gap. It's hard to tell right now. So, but you might want to check with, you know, for example, Elevate IP or IPON, etc., to see if it might fall into one of those categories. But you most likely will need a technology or an IP lawyer who's in that space to really help you navigate that. Tolu, do you want to add anything?
Okay, I think I just wanted to add that, you know, within the IP program right now with Elevate IP, you can actually request for an IP coach. So even before you engage us, you can start requesting for an IP coach that would allow you to, you know, look within your business and then figure out, is this the right time for me to you know, apply for an IP? What things do I need to do and how should I go about it? So that's what an IP coach would allow you to do.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Just looking at the chat, doesn't seem to be more questions. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous. So great event. I've learned a lot. Great event. I've learned a lot. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. Great presentation. Thank you. Okay. Another question here. How does one keep track of success in the IP space in a Black community? That's a tough one.
There's a gap. That's something we could do better and track better. Absolutely.
I'll say that one way we've done it has been we've created a community that's very interactive. So we also apply strategies like follow-up, because we do understand that the way we work within our community, we can get, you know, caught up in our businesses. So we have follow-ups, emails and messages, mini messages that we send to our, you know, our community members and just ask them how they're doing within their business and what help would they need. And that's how we're able to find out, you know, sometimes when someone requires IP or what kind of help that they need, because they tell us stories that are going on, they're ongoing within their lives, and we're able to actually relate that and say, well, we have this resource for you. Why don't you try going through the IP process, or why don't you join the wait list so that the next time it comes up, we're able to help you out. So that's one way we've used to be able to track where our members are within the IP process.
Okay, I have two final questions for both of you, and then we'll move to the closing remarks. These are I don't know, like we'll play with that. So as a Black professional that interacts with Canadians and Canadian entrepreneurs, including Black Canadian entrepreneurs, what gives you hope right now? And that's the question for each one of you. And we'll start with the one that's smiling the most on the podium right now, Tolu.
Hope is, you know, the awareness that we're getting about intellectual property. I would say that's the hope. And I'm saying it's because intellectual property can just really be your business. Your business doesn't need to be your business. It could be your business. That's something I've learned. Just doing my own readings, going through, trainer sessions and understanding a little bit more about IP. And how easy, once you've gone through all the bureaucracy, it's pretty much easy for you to delegate, outsource when you have your IP done and you're able to see everything just fully in one picture. So that's the hope that I have, that we're all having awareness about it. And I know that so many other people are going to take action, especially when it comes to intellectual property.
Thank you so much. Eddy, same question.
Well, I would say hope is there because we can see that resources are available now, and it's for us, since we are in the ecosystem, it's to spread that information to entrepreneurs, and I can say I'm fortunate to have entrepreneurs coming to me with brilliant ideas, and then I know now that I can rely on you guys to provide them all the tools they need to have to protect themselves. And this is something that I didn't see that when I first started at Futurpreneur. Even in my past as a bank manager, I wasn't thinking about that. But now I think that we have so many great young entrepreneurs and come up with ideas, and it's time for them to protect themselves. We don't want that. I think was it Janice was in the previous panel. She was explaining that someone they used her idea, and then she didn't know she can protect. I guess she didn't know that to protect herself. But this is something that we have available now. So if we can spread the word everywhere for Black entrepreneurs to know that we do have resources available that can help them to protect themselves. And I think it's great.
Thank you so much. We're almost out of time. So Natalia?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I would just say, we're such a, creative and talented group of people. And so, like Tolu and Eddy was saying, it's really about access and awareness. And now that those pieces are coming together, I think we're in such a great position and to support and champion each other and encourage each other to, take up more space, use the resources that are available and really run with them. Like there's the runways there for us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We are actually out of time. We have to move to the closing remarks. Thank you so much for all your wonderful insights that you shared. You touched on so many different topics, and very, very valuable. I'll have to watch the recording again and take some notes. I've learned a few things as well. So I really, really enjoy that. So just wanted to say thank you again, Eddy, Tolu, and Natalia. Now we're going to move to the closing remark, and I'm passing the floor to Nina Kushwaha.
Very much, Stephen. It's what a fantastic afternoon. I have learned so much, and I've been in the IP space for a number of years. But I really just wanted to thank everyone who joined us today and contributed to such a thoughtful and frankly an energizing conversation. There were so many takeaways on building generational wealth and enabling growth. Of course, identifying barriers, the advice that was provided, some concrete ideas to address them. The mindset shift with respect to IP, that importance of ownership, that importance of thinking about it early. And then, of course, those spin-off effects of being able to control your genius. So it was also really interesting to hear where we in government can play a role, and more of a role, where we are playing a role and where we can sort of advance in that space. So as we reflect on today's dialogue, it's clear that intellectual property is far more than a technical concept or legal tool. It's a pathway for building lasting economic strength, to preserve and to share different cultures, and to create opportunities that will extend well beyond a single generation. So as mentioned previously, this year marks 3 decades of Black History Month in Canada, and the national theme reminds us just how deeply Black brilliance has shaped our country, from the trailblazers who laid the groundwork to the innovators who are redefining what's possible today. So the stories, the insights, and the lived experiences shared by our distinguished speakers today highlight the importance of ensuring that Black creators, entrepreneurs, and knowledge keepers have equitable access to the tools that protect their ideas and amplify their impact. Equitable access to tools is just one part of CIPO's commitment to reducing barriers. We're also working to make the IP system more inclusive by working with partners in different communities and improving the responsiveness of our service delivery. Our aim in doing so is that every innovator, regardless of background, can see themselves participate fully and thrive in the IP ecosystem. When we support Black innovation, we're not only honoring our history, we're investing in Canada's future. By recognizing and investing in Black creativity and entrepreneurship, we help ensure that innovation reflects the full Canadian story, the past, the present, and the future. A future where creativity is recognized, protected, and empowered to grow across generations. So I hope today's discussion inspires each of us to think about what generational investment means in the context of intellectual property and what building wealth represents in underserved communities. So let's continue championing inclusive innovation and uplifting the next wave of Black visionaries who will shape the economic and creative landscape of tomorrow. So thank you once again for your time, for your engagement, and for your commitment to all the work that you do. I'll pass the floor back to Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nina, for these inspiring words. We want to thank you so much for making the time to invest in yourself and learn about IP, learn about how you can use that investment. And we want to wish you a great afternoon, a great evening, and happy Black History Month. Thank you so much. This concludes the event.
Thank you for watching. We hope you found this discussion on intellectual property insightful. If you're a Black entrepreneur looking to dive deeper into IP, be sure to check out our page on Black entrepreneurs and intellectual property. There, you'll find information on funding programs, success stories, and other resources to get you inspired and started on your journey with IP. You can also book a free one-on-one session with an intellectual property advisor in your region to get advice on how IP can help you grow your business. You will also find all the links in the description box below.